Yes, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 20th, 2024 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. We have a packed agenda tonight and a great audience, so we'll go ahead and get started. So the first item on tonight's agenda is news and mail. Does anybody have any news or mail they'd like to share? All right. Any member input? All right. Any public input? Would anybody in the audience like to?
We'll wait.
Anybody virtually? All right. Hearing none, we'll jump into the next item on the agenda for tonight, and that would be the Clean Lakes Committee applications for funding for Long Lake, Mill Pond, and Dopal Pond. Good evening.
Andrew, thank you, and happy spring.
Happy spring.
We got rain just to show.
Yeah.
Little snow this morning, just flurries.
Perfect timing.
That's it. Thank you for seeing me this evening and for last month as well. Hopefully I've got enough data for us tonight to sow through things. I've taken the requests out into four. I had them organized by lake last time, or pond, and I broke out the two that we have for Long Lake. So if we can go through, we'll start from the most expensive down to the least expensive, and that puts us right in along the shoreline of Long Lake. We have floating islands. These floating islands seem to have come up from the muck and deteriorating matter that's kind of forming the bottom of the lake right now. They've come up within lily pads, so as they're floating, they're not moving. They're anchored right there, and they've been an eyesore for a year now, maybe a year and a half. We were hoping they might just go away. They were suppressed for 2 months under the ice, and well, now they're back. So we're requesting $50,000 to address this with an amphibious excavator. We thought that would be easier. The original idea was to actually haul these or drag these over to the shoreline and then take a machine and dig them out from the bank. It's probably more disruptive that way. With the amphibious equipment, it will be something that we can create a barrier around to protect the rest of the lake, and we're hoping that would be amenable. We've looked into this facility through some of the other contractors that have done eco harvesting for us, and there are a few competitors out there. So we hope for a good bid on this, and we think that $50,000 would be adequate. We've got some pictures in the brochure and or in the brief here. The one that's a close up. There's dead fish. It's not habitable. We're laughing with some of the neighbors around the lake that people are going to find this a real asset, and the birds are going to take to it. And we haven't seen it come to pass. So that's number one. That's our $50,000. The second, also in Long Lake, is the invasive aquatic plant management we find ourselves doing. But starting last year, we have switched over from herbicide treatments to what they call eco harvesting. It's a machine. There's a picture of a machine in the brief that literally goes along, and there's a conveyor, or there's a large cylinder on the front that engages invasive plants wherever it's aimed. It draws them up out of the water and into the back of the boat. So it actually removes them from the water column. We're thinking this is much more it's a positive approach, whereas in the past, all the herbicides have been effective. They have left an awful lot of debris in the water, and it forms just one more layer of accumulated nutrient-rich silt and so on at the bottom of the pond. So not a good situation. If we can get some of that biomass out of the ponds we're working with, Long Lake especially, it will help preserve the lake for many more years. So this is our approach. We had a bid last year for $21,000, so we're carrying that over this year, expecting it to be about the same. But it is being a big process. We're not sure exactly how it's going to come down, but 21 would be adequate. We didn't have a lot of problems in Long Lake last year, but we had excessive problems in Spectacle Pond and Forge Pond. We're not quite sure what triggered it, but we think it has something to do with the temperature conditions. We had a very light winter, as you recall, almost no snow melt, and we went from that into a very dry spring. The flip side, in July, it did nothing but pour rain, which seems to have spurred growth of indigenous or aquatic invasive plants in 2 other lakes. Not so much in Long Lake, but we're waiting now because we're wondering. We're ahead. We're scratching our heads. We're wondering exactly if this is going to be a commonplace sort of occurrence or this was just an anomaly. We're hoping anomaly. So that's the $21,000.
It says 27 on here.
I'm sorry, 27.
Right?
27. I apologize. I've got
That's
numbers
okay.
flowing through my head like nobody's business. It's been kind of an intense time for us. The Mill Pond boat launch access path is something that we have for recreation rather than open space. We are looking for $20,000 on that. It's a project that we did back in 2014, but under the circumstances that we were in at that point in time, we ended up putting in a pathway down this 8-foot bank from the parking area to the water's edge. That is really too steep. I think it's dangerous, and I felt bad about it ever since it was done. But it was one of those kind of complete the job and don't make any waves. I think it's quite treacherous, and we have developed an approach and have consulted with 2 other engineering firms right now who gave us quotes that are included. They're a little fat on the $20,000, but I think under the circumstances, since everything's there and in place, we don't need as much advanced work through them, and we can negotiate a few different things down. So we're still feeling the $20,000 ask is reasonable. But we would really love to see that project done and make things a little bit more accessible on the shoreline for many more people. I think the kids probably enjoy the sledding, but beyond that, it's a little treacherous. So the final is the invasive water chestnut at Doleful Pond, and the little map shows Doleful Pond as sort of a blip near Route 2 and Forge Pond, and yet that's the focus of Fort Pond. I'm sorry. Yeah, Fort numbers. This has been a challenge. I'm a carpenter, but the water chestnut is a recurring problem there. They have seeds that are viable for 12 years. So once they get down in the muck, it's almost impossible to retrieve them. So we monitor this, and we didn't get a chance to catch it last year due to budget problems that we had then. So it's imperative that we get in there this year. It's a $1,600 ask, and it's a manual process. It's all done by hand. In fact, sometimes there are groups that volunteer to do this, but we haven't got any here. Somebody in the CLC was laughing the other night that it'd be a fun afternoon. We're waiting to see. We may move in that direction, but right now, that's our ask for Doleful Pond, and to keep that in its place, hopefully, and prevent it from spreading the fort or Long Pond, and that would be the conclusion. Mitt.
What was the number for the Mill Pond boat launch restoration?
That's $20,000.
Thank you.
Although the application that I'm looking at says CPA funds requested 50,000, total project cost 20,000. So
Is that another typo?
I'm thinking maybe.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Let me double check that.
You noticed that.
Somebody's reading. think that's going to, oh, is that on the initial paperwork?
It was when I got today.
On the
On the
application?
application, yeah, on the
I'm
front
sorry.
page.
I haven't looked at the application in about a month,
Okay.
so I will correct that.
Okay,
And happy to report that back. I think I was just updating the Long Lake form.
yeah, copy and paste,
And I
yeah.
missed it, so. Yeah,
Could we,
thank you for catching that.
since we have all the numbers and 20,000 for that, that's from the recreation, could we itemize where the other funds are coming from?
Absolutely. So I'm thinking what we can do is we can go about this in separate projects. So we can go perhaps start with the water chestnut, determine which category we're going to take it from. I imagine undesignated is probably going to fund a lot of these, but we'll see how the board.
I was instructed to put it under open space.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be an open space project, but we can pay for it through undesignated. But yeah, depending on how the committee.
Sure.
So
That leads to another question, may I?
of course.
Just, I wasn't here at the last meeting, but have we determined eligibility?
Yes, so all of the projects were determined to be eligible at the last meeting.
Thank you, let's go ahead.
Perfect. So I was thinking we could take these separately and vote on them and determine where we're gonna take the money if the money is so awarded. So why don't we start with the water chestnut? The ask for $1,600. Did the board have any questions?
Why wouldn't we do it under open space? I mean, it is Dolphin Pond is part of Newtown Hill.
That is true. That is true.
Open space.
Open space. Okay, it makes sense.
I really appreciate at the last meeting learning what the name of that pond was.
Yeah.
That my dog almost drowned in 20 years ago.
Oh,
Struggling in the water chestnut.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I don't know if you got all the way to the end of that paper there, but water chestnut originated in Cambridge, in Fresh Pond.
Oh, wow.
Here, around 1900, there was a gardener that thought it'd be a great idea to
Okay.
plant some there.
Yeah.
And it has since spread to Virginia in that period of time. So, yeah, and it's tough to chase. It's almost impossible. I think they spent $2 or $3 million on Lake Champlain alone, doing cleanup there. So it's
Well, Pepperell has an annual water chestnut bowl on the Nashua River.
yeah, a party.
Andrew, you mentioned undesignated, did you, how would you make the case for that?
So for this particular one, I know that it's not open space property per se, it's a water body, but I could be easily convinced that it's under the open space category in this instance.
Well, that's a good question, but isn't it part of the Newtown Hill Conservation?
It is.
Okay.
It is, yeah. So, if there are no further questions from the committee, does anybody in the audience have any questions?
I have a quick question. Is this gonna be an annual ask, do you envision?
I would like that, although I'll be perfectly frank, we're going to be approaching the select board in the next couple of months and seeking some resolution to our funding situation because we lost our cell tower funds a couple of years ago, and we have been going through a transition since then. And we really don't have anything that addresses problems that can't be somehow attached to the water department. And Long Lake is one of those. We're not on an aquifer. We're not affecting the water supply really. So Dolphin Pond, Mill Pond, pretty much the same. So we will either be coming back again and hopefully being able to partner again in the future, or we'll have some line item ourselves or something. I don't know what the plan is at this point.
Can I comment on that?
Absolutely.
I think it is a precedent setting thing, because the cell phone towers were a really reliable source for CLC, the Clean Lakes Committee, funding. It's allowed for really, proactive and also, continuing, projects, so that every year they're really taking care of a lot of things over a number of different bodies of water. The precedence is that, if it were an annual thing and those cell phone tower revenues were streaming somewhere else to cash and being used for whatever, it would mean that we'd have a burden on our budget that we haven't had for 20 years. During that whole period of time, CLC has been doing that work for decades of this kind with the money that's been available. So I would say, if this were an annual ask, and next year we had this conversation, I'd be saying, what did we learn from the Board of Selectmen meeting, John? And then you could report to us, right? And we can also advocate ourselves or through John, if the CPC felt that it was really an unacceptable burden, that we would try to say, let's make sure that some of those cell phone tower funds end up being blended funds as revenue to us.
Yeah, our problem, to explain a little bit of the background, was that there was a ruling a couple of years ago by the Massachusetts Board of Finance, and determined the enterprise funds that were being generated from the cell tower, or actually the property of the water department, and as such could only be applied to supplying or maintaining services for fresh drinking water. And so we can look at Spec Pond and say, okay, well, that definitely impacts the aquifer it's sitting above. We can do that. We can almost do that at Forge Pond. Not quite. They're bucking that a little bit, but they're saying that money is really for the use of the water department. And the water department would rather have it go to CLC, but again, as an enterprise separate from the town, those monies are as part of that pool. It's gone back to them. So we lost $300,000 we were saving for Mill Pond to do the restoration there. Fortunately, we didn't get to go ahead on that, so we're not, finding ourselves without funding for that renovation. But it's been an unpleasant couple of years.
We have a selectman here. I hope you're listening, because at the last meeting, it was alarming that all of a sudden the CPC would be asked for a continue, and I think you had said you had 150 a year from the water department before, or what was the annual budget?
They're anticipating, they've actually been very generous. The water commissioners have come through, and it's about $150,000 that they're contributing this year to carry our annual testing programs, just to maintain our data on all the different lakes. They have contributed there for Long Lake, but some of those things just cover all of the regions.
So Mitt's suggestion of putting it from the water department into blended funds is a really good suggestion, because we leverage that then for additional state money.
Sure.
And then the other question I had was, what is the sanction if you just ignore that Department of Revenue thing? I mean, that seems to me to be totally against the way the system that we put in place that was.
It was working wonderfully.
Yeah.
And we had no worries, and well, you know how good things only have a short lifespan. I am upset with the situation, and yet when we appear before the selectmen, the water department will be with us, and we'll seek to find some way, and they'll know if there's any opportunity.
I mean, because if we had known that at the time we set up the cell phone thing, we wouldn't have done it that way, because it was intended to go toward conservation.
Nobody understood that anybody was doing anything wrong. I understand through this whole process that quite a number of towns had been taking that money and applying it to whatever they wanted.
I see.
Maybe some of it was going to the transfer station and who knows what else. And it just got too crazy for the state, and they just said, no, we're just going to curtail this. Can't
Okay.
take that money out of the water department and say it's for something else when it's water department land. There's straightening things out. So we had tried initially just to shift, the committee over under the auspices of the water department, because we worked with them continuously from the beginning. And we were under the select board for a while, but, that wasn't even sufficient, so.
Okay.
Steve, did you have a question?
So I just wanted to mention that as I understand it, so I'm on the State Bar, I'm on the Clean Lakes Committee, and we've had, over the last few years, a number of discussions about the funding and the state ruling and all of that. And at the time that the state ruled it, we were, the money came back out of the selectmen's control, back into the water department's control. The understanding is that it needs, because it's an enterprise fund, it needs to be spent on things that are consistent with the water department's goals and objectives. That has been interpreted to mean that it doesn't include the Clean Lakes Committee, although the Clean Lakes have been part of the water department's objectives for the last several decades.
Where did the interpretation come from?
Well, it's not clear. At the time that the money came back into the enterprise, into the water department at the enterprise, the Clean Lakes Committee was told that this is still money that's earmarked for the Clean Lakes Committee. The money that had yet to be spent, that $500,000, was also earmarked for the Clean Lakes Committee. As recently as last spring, we were told again that it was still that way. And then over the course of the late spring and into the summer, that changed, and we didn't really get a clear explanation as to what was driving that change.
Well, that's an issue. You sort of had money evaporate. I mean, I know it didn't evaporate, but, so
We felt it that
who was making, we don't need to get into that here, I guess, but you have a task ahead of you to, sort this out. And I don't know, it's like after the last meeting where you laid all this out, it was sort of not alarming, but it was the kind of thing where, there's these circles of responsibility and expertise, and they're not meshing now after so many years of working, and I think most people in town, we don't realize all the efforts that have been made over the, all these years to keep the waterway, the waters that you work on, so that we can enjoy them. It's sort of like an invisible thing, and you've made it visible by this ask. And I think, Mitt started this by saying, well, is this going to be an annual thing? Well, I hope not, because it's a big burden on the CPC to, to do this. And I guess we would have to take the attitude that in this sort of interstitial period of time between one way of looking at it and the other, I think it's worthy. But once again, I think next year I'd be going, I think we need to dig deeper and, find another solution.
Understandable.
And that is our intent.
Right.
To look more broadly. And it's not even clear that, it seems like the allocation from the water board this year was larger than they had planned, and could well be larger than they would be expecting to support next year.
What does that mean? I mean,
Uh,
for the,
We'll be
Spec
falling
Pond
short.
So, they originally planned $100,000 budget for the Clean Lakes Committee. And at the last meeting that we, attended with them, they added another $50,000 to support activities on Lake Metawanaki, Forge Pond, as a recognition that this time around, The coordination wasn't all quite there early enough in the budget process, and that kind of left the Clean Lakes Committee in a bad situation. And so they were willing to sort of make an accommodation to help that out. It's
But,
not
but,
clear
but their attitude is the 100 or 150 or whatever would go towards the spec bond specifically.
It's not that explicit. I mean, they were planning to fund that, at a level that would basically cover Spectacle Pond. They have said that Spectacle Pond is clearly in their, wheelhouse because, they have a well right on the lake. And they're not so explicit about, what the long-term situation is with the other lakes.
Well, these requests will go before town meeting, and I think if I were you, I would use the opportunity to go before town meeting and say, we had this money, we don't have it anymore, we'd like it back.
When they come to town meeting, do they each come up individually, or do all the CPC things come up as a bundle?
So typically it's a bundle. And then under that, if somebody has a hold on a particular project, they can run through it. Typically, over the last 10 years or so, though, I think that the moderator has presented the CPC articles as a bundle for one warrant article, and they'll go through project by project, and if there's a hold, then
I'm thinking that do we have to present it to the finance committee?
uh,
Because I remember last year there were some comments about, the last time meeting comments about the window restoration.
I think the FinCom might review them prior to town meeting.
Okay.
Does that sound right, Matt?
It's different every year. Some
Yeah.
days there's we've done a number of different models for committees to present their rationale for funding. And some years it doesn't happen at all.
Anyway, I guess all I'm saying is it seems like it's an issue that's affecting all of us that needs to be resolved. And the money was there, it's not there anymore. Where's it going? Where's the cell tower money going? Anyway, yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Rob Ronson, 25 Juniper Road. My wife and I moved here in June of 2021. I live very close to Long Lake, got involved with Long Lake Neighborhoods Association, then learned about Clean Lakes Committee, got involved there. I've since gone on to attend water commissioner meetings. I've been very much a person welcomed everywhere that I've been, and I appreciate the same welcoming I receive here. This dialogue is very, very good. I, as a brand new resident with no long-term history, I have attended town meetings where I've heard people talk about family, extensions that go on for many, many decades. I don't have that experience. What I do have experience is watching very dedicated people in any variety of committees of the town do very, very good work on behalf of the town. But like some of the dialogue that I'm hearing here, I'm finding myself understanding there was once a cell tower fund that was established in the early 2000s that was working along, and then 2 years ago it got changed, and $400,000 that was under the purview of the Clean Lakes Committee all of a sudden went poof and got transferred through proper channels to the Littleton Electric Light and Water Department, which is fine. And then dedicated people go into appropriate meetings involving town administration personnel with members of these committees, and out comes the next, version or interpretation, well-intended. I'm not suggesting anything nefarious, that establishes that, yes, that in fact is the understanding from the guidance from the Mass DEP that provided the guidance. And that's just the way it is. And now Littleton Electric and Light and Water will fulfill their enterprise responsibilities associated with sustainable drinking water. Makes sense. But it leads to some of the questions in the dialogue that's here. There was money, it's now gone. And we've got this funding need because the lakes need my experience here, the lakes have undergone some difficult times in the last 2 years. There's probably a need for greater funding. So what I find myself wanting to say beyond what I've just said is hope you'll support this, because it seems to be a real transition challenge over the last 2 years that I'm personally witnessing in various iterations as it moves through committees. The other part that I think seems appropriate to ask, so that all of us can get beyond this, is have some statement of finding or some statement, whatever you want to call it, so that different dedicated people in these various committees no longer have these questions with regard to where the money was, how it's going to be used in the future, and resolve what is might be an appropriate mechanism with regard to funding of the valuable resource that our lakes are. So I just ask for some consideration. I know that's probably outside of your boundaries, but I find myself going to meeting after meeting in which there seems to be the substance appears to be the same, but it's always a little bit different, and there's always appropriate questions being asked as to what's taking place and what the future will bring. It needs to be resolved. Look forward to it being resolved. Hope that anything that you can do in order to, or Mark, as a select board member, anything you do to get this in a past where it currently is, so that everybody on all these committees of importance can do the right thing for the citizens of Littleton. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? So with the application for funding in front of us for $1,600 for water chestnuts mitigation at Zolfo Pond, let's see how we should proceed with this. So perhaps we can vote to approve the funding application first and then vote on where the funding will come from after, and
Let's just put it in the motion. How about
that works.
from open space? Somebody could move that $1,600 from open space for manual removal of water chestnut at Dulce Ponds.
I so move.
Second.
All right, it's moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Jared? Mitt?
Aye.
Sam?
Yeah, aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Bartlett?
Aye.
And Saul?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. Okay, thank you, everyone. Dave?
Did he say annual?
No.
No.
I thought
He said manual.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's right. For manual removal.
that's
Yeah.
just my ear filter hoping that I heard.
Oh. All right, so next we have the, why don't we do the boat launch access path to Mill Pond? That's a request for $20,000. Do we have any further discussion on that from the committee or anybody?
Can we discuss now what that comes out of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would that be recreation or, okay, then that's how you apply.
That's how.
And Alicia and Saul, has the Park and Rec Commission weighed in on how they would perhaps view this fund? Like, do they see that as undesignated or?
I don't believe that this project has been in front of the Park and Rec Commission.
It has not. Yeah, so this was not something that we were aware of until recently.
Sorry, everyone, I just noticed there's a couple of people waiting to come in. Okay, perfect. Okay, so, Saul, how do you feel about using undesignated or recreation for this particular project?
I mean, you know, I would say I don't have the balances in front of me. We do have some big recreation projects in the pipeline. but I don't recall what the undesignated fund balance looks like. I mean, I think in terms of, the criteria, it's certainly a recreation type activity, but I think it can go either way.
Okay. All right. Is there any further questions?
So as a neighbor, I want to confirm that that is a very steep and uncomfortable ramp, and it would be an improvement to make it more useful. And I think it would be appreciated. There are people who use that lake to pond, to fish on, and launch boats and stuff, canoes.
Yeah, I can only imagine it's quite a challenge moving equipment up and down that bank.
It's a challenge getting me up and down.
All right. Mitz, yes.
In my recollection, the original project was done with in-kind services for construction from town departments. I'm not sure which, but there was definitely construction costs that were skin in the game, so to speak, that saved CPC money. And I wondered if there was a possibility to call that in on this project.
That's a good question. Has
I'd like to cut the cost of this as much as possible. I realize the path, actually constructing the path would not likely be more than $5,000. But that is, that we have liability issues and we have a whole drain of things that sort of weigh in. We have a couple of quotes there that are at 25 or more. We got one for 40. But it's a path, people. I think we can handle that. But talking to Matt Silverman, he's fairly confident that we can negotiate a lot of this down, keep it at 20. I think that's the in-kind services would be that sort of back and forth. If we can do a hands-on thing there and actually designate, stake out where we want to have this path and have that approved and so on, and kind of cut back on the engineering expenses, we'd be happy to see that happen. Again, we're still flirting with $20,000.
yes, Mark.
Who controls that land? Does it have to go in front of the Conservation Commission or LCT to get permission? And would they be capable of providing the in-kind services?
So that would have to go before Concom to construct the path and to do any work essentially within 100 feet of the lake shore. So that would require a permit. In terms of Concom having funding for that,
I'm not saying funding for it. I'm saying, I know, like, when the boardwalks and whatever is going on at Cloverdale, they're getting the highway department to contribute. There's other projects that, LCT goes and says, we're building a boardwalk, come on out, right? And, conservation or donors provide the materials and then they find the laborers, right? But
yeah, that's a good point.
or it's an Eagle Scout project or, things like that. So
yeah, that's definitely something to consider as we move forward. I mean, if approved at town meeting and approved by the committee prior to that, CLC would have to get an order of conditions or at least a determination of applicability for proceeding. But yeah, when that does occur, I mean, it would be good to see if there were any scouts or any volunteers that would.
Well, my other point was if it's on Conservation Commission land, then the Conservation Commission actually should also vote to approve it so that you can say that they're agreeing that you can do this path on their property.
Yeah, it's town-owned land. I don't think the
I
conservation.
don't think it's conservation. It is town, it's listed as town-owned.
Right.
I just don't know whose control it's under.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's Concom or if it's
All the work was done through the CLC.
CLC. Okay.
South Daniels oversaw the whole thing.
So it could be general municipal right now, but
I have no idea. I'm just, if it's controlled by an organization other than the town, like if it's Conservation Commission land, then they probably have to vote on it.
oh, absolutely.
Sure. There was no vote at the time. It's just town hall. Steve Sussman, the rep from Mill Pond, lived right next door, that this is gonna be sweet.
That is a good point though, because Concom would have to weigh in on this project even going forward. It's a shame that, we didn't have a definitive, answer. I'm tempted to go on GIS and take a look, but,
So
yeah.
where is it on,
It's at the corner of, it's Lake Warren and, in Harwood Avenue.
It's one house in from that corner.
I think it
yeah,
was,
it is listed, the owner is listed as the town.
I think it was a tax, it was a piece of land that was just stray, so to speak. It was paid by the Board of Selectmen through tax abatement or something.
They actually seem to have a couple of different access points and lots kind of put into that one piece, but
Yeah, there's an
So
easement between it.
GIS may be wrong as well. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, if it's under the town, I mean, Conscom obviously still needs to weigh in. Is that the select board that makes a final decision on those properties?
As to who winds up holding them, or?
Well, no, as to if you want to do something with a town-owned piece of property.
Oh, yes. I mean, if it
Unless
was.
it's in, like the, 300 King is in control of the Park and Rec Department, but, other properties are, if they're held by the town, are generally held by, I think, under the control of the select board.
So I think Conservation Commission probably should weigh in, and if it's a town-owned property, the select board should probably vote that we're allowing this. You guys can vote to approve it conditional on those other approvals, right? But just to make sure that everything's aligned.
Absolutely, yeah, because I mean, if we.
I don't see a problem with it, mind you, but it's just to make sure that there is no problem later.
Absolutely, go through the proper channels to. Yeah, because if this was approved and the select board said, hey, we don't want this to go on the land, it would kind of.
The application said that the property owner is the town of Littleton and not the project. And you received approval from the owner. It said yes in the application. On the eligibility request, excuse me.
Well, they received permission for the actual original construction, right?
Yes,
This is to sort of rectify
it's a
shortcomings.
CLC project, and
Yeah,
that's how that was checked.
yeah.
Okay,
So this is to
this is all based on
rectify
the original.
shortcomings in the original project, which actually tend to increase the liability the town might have for people using this particular thing. So I think it'd be in the interest of the town to, make this better. And of course, like any project, the Conservation Commission would have to issue an order of conditions and, whatever, which might be the extra $15,000 that, you're talking about. So, anyway.
Well, I was on the lot, last week with Tim Pearson, and, we were looking things over, and he thought it could probably be accepted without any problem, because it is an improvement,
Yeah.
a relief of what really is kind of a treacherous path.
Oh, Alicia, you put your hand up? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to add that part of the open space and recreation plan was in the future, as we're updating or maintaining things, we want to be able to try to keep the ADA, AAB requirements in mind. So I was just thinking if that has been considered in part of this project, because I know we were kind of saying, well, we can go a little bit on the cheaper side. I wouldn't say do that. I would say, think about actually accomplishing and getting that below 3% grade, something that's going to be more accessible for anyone to be able to use.
don't think that would be physically possible.
That's a,
And
that's
the
a
width is
massive
that wide.
task.
Yeah, that's like.
That's removing,
300 foot
trees.
long ramp,
Yeah.
but that's a good point. I
I think
mean,
that's called an elevator.
And that's gonna boost the expense just a little.
Good point.
so the question once again is what bucket? If we support this, what bucket will it come out? And so, it seems like the recreation bucket is spoken for. Is this what I'm hearing, or?
So,
No, I wouldn't say that it's spoken for. I don't have a feel for the balances at the moment. If there's a substantial balance in undesignated, it seems like a reasonable project to use that for. If there's not, and there is a balance in the recreation, then I think it's also appropriate there.
Thanks for your thoughts on that, Saul. This is Mitt. I think it might be showing respect for the process. We need to show fidelity to the recreation, Parks and Recreation and Community Education coming to us periodically. Annually, they come to our meetings and tell us what their thoughts are in terms of budgets, and we ask them to say what's in the pipeline and forecast for us what your needs might be. And then if at the last minute, if I hear you correctly, Alicia, that you weren't aware of this project, I think it might be show fidelity to you for us to take it from undesignated.
Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted me to speak to that. Yes, this was kind of a last minute. I found out on Monday that this wasn't going to be covered by capital. So it's up to the wishes of the board how you would like to proceed on that. So it's not my place. So, you guys do what you think is best.
Mark, did you?
So can I ask why you would spend anything out of undesignated rather than spending it out of recreation and move undesignated into recreation? Because if you're spending it out of undesignated, then you really don't have a track of how you're spending the funds, because undesignated goes to whatever you want. You can move the undesignated into the recreation and then spend it out of recreation, and then you can still see what your percentages are. It would make much more sense to never spend undesignated money, in my opinion.
And
Yes,
I wonder if I could speak to that, because it would create some clarity to it, and we'd like to document where things come from. And tonight's minutes might serve for that, but I think there's an anachronism to the category itself, because it's built up over time outside of through our budgeting process. I don't think we accurately predicted that we'd have such a large chunk in undesignated. So we're trying, I think, over time to sort of find creative ways to bring it down, so that in our process we'll have more carefully bounded each bucket and not have a big fluffy undesignated thing, which is sort of a big candy bin for people to grab in. It would be nice to have a smaller undesignated fund.
Now, I know there was discussion that you can't move from, once something goes into a fund, and make sure I'm remembering this correctly, that once something is in a fund, it cannot be transferred to a different bucket. Is that correct?
Town meeting.
Right.
Once it's designated, I don't think it can go to undesignated.
But
Yeah.
undesignated could go into.
Or to another, that's, I guess, what I'm asking is can, in fact, undesignated be moved to a specific bucket, or does it just get spent in a project?
I think it can be spent, this is Mitt, it can be spent, I think the buckets are there for our purposes, for policy. They're not relevant to the CPA. We just have to make sure that we don't spend less than 10, we need to stick to the 10-10-70 rule. Other than that, it's bookkeeping that serves our policy purposes, I think. So to have a big undesignated fund is fine. We can spend it on anything we want.
We could, yeah, because per category, the only requirement is that we put 10%, like Ned said, into each of the categories. And we as a committee have always allocated a little bit more towards the categories based off of the prior and future need of open space, housing, recreation, and historical. But I know some communities will have the lion's share in undesignated, and it's a little more at play. But I find that when you put a little too much in undesignated, the various categories kind of fight amongst themselves for the money, as opposed to Park and Rec knowing that it has X amount, open space knowing that it has X amount. So it's kind of like a guaranteed pot of money for that particular category, again, based on need and prior use and future use.
Right, I think what Saul was referring to was last week when Carolyn, read something, just clarifying that we can't transfer between those assigned buckets to take from.
Oh, yes,
Right,
yes.
right, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that might, and maybe the solution to this is that we fund from the recreation bucket and then transfer either a similar amount or some other amount into the recreation bucket from undesignated.
We can do that later when we have the figures in front of us. Nothing.
But that's also, is that something that we can do, or does that also have to go to town meeting?
Yeah, anytime money is going from undesignated to a particular category, I believe town meeting has to officially vote it in.
But I think something we'd want to, it could be in the fall, but it'd be nice to do it in the bulk. We're going to have a fairly voluminous article anyway, so something to keep in mind as we're putting together the article or the articles for the warrant coming up.
So for tonight's purposes, with the article in front, the projects, I'm a little tired. The projects in front of us, how do we want to proceed? Do we want to,
I think it's a little complicated and I didn't quite follow the rationale or the need for what you said. The rationale definitely for Saul, but I'm not sure the real need for it legally. I think to avoid going on too long about this, it's a relatively small project. I think $20,000 for construction is a small amount. So I think it's great that we can do a little improvement. I think we should take it from recreation just to move things along tonight.
okay.
And then we can say that we stay straight in at least one way. Alicia, I appreciate you saying it's a decision for our board, and we just would encourage people to always come to our meetings ahead if you're thinking about and ask, and we appreciate you doing that, and just let folks listening know that to approach us, there's a lot of discretion that we have to decide whether a project is taken or not, although we usually take projects on and award them. But as a new partner, it's great to have the CLC here, and I don't think you did anything wrong with this. So let's push ahead.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion, perhaps? If there's no further.
Could somebody move that $20,000 from recreation for Mill Pond boat launch restoration be awarded?
Second.
Okay. And did we want to put a condition on this that it's pending site owner approval? Does that make sense?
I think it's owned by the town, that the issue would be that you'd have to go through, the requisite conservation hearings, etc. I
We
know.
would do that
Do
anyway.
you think
because it's
the
proximity to
selectmen
the
really
pond.
would need to vote on whether to,
I have no idea.
yeah, I know.
I don't think it's-
These
I
poor
think it's a
guys, they're
formality.
trying to keep our waterways going, and we're just, we've given them $1,600.
I think it's a formality. I think the select board voting on it gives you more access to highway department resources for construction.
Well, that's a good.
On the application, or the eligibility request, it said all work done will be done by a licensed landscape contractor under contract to the water department. Was that the plan?
As
Yeah.
we did the original project. Yeah. But of course, we're open to anything that would get the job done, you know, get the results we're looking for, and save the town money.
Those are probably the highest cost contractors. you
I know,
can
but
get.
that's what it says in our paperwork, so that's all.
Can I review what we have?
Absolutely.
Bartlett, I asked for a motion, I guess, or suggested, if it's okay, you being, Bartlett moved, seconded by Mitt Wanzer, that $20,000 from Recreation for Mill Pond boat launch restoration be awarded. That's all I have right now, period. Does it need to say something about approval pending or?
How does the committee feel about that?
I think that Mitt's prior suggestion about referring to the minutes, you know, referring to this discussion about these issues is sufficient. It's my opinion.
In which? on
Well,
what
you had
subject?
said, well,
money
on
matters or
the subject, no, on the
land
subject of land ownership, the conservation process is implied. You know, you would have to be, you know, you would have to do that regardless of what we say.
Permitting.
The issue of, the issue of the selectmen weighing in on it.
Yeah.
Can happen. You're gonna be before the selectmen. Just mention it, talk about it. You know, it's another matter. We're undergoing this. It's town owned. We did this work in 2014. It was not quite substantial enough, and we're trying to rectify that. And we have CPC costs.
So, earlier in the minutes, I wrote, Mark Rambacher thought it'd be prudent to bring the project before the select board who might endorse administration of the project to an agent. This Conservation Commission may need to be consulted or appealed to for a permit. That sound okay? Do you want to make a vote?
Do we need in the motion a reference to taking it out of recreation?
That would be helpful.
It's in there.
It's in there,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't-
So we have a motion.
And
You're
seconded by me.
Okay, so let's vote.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Jerry,
Yes.
Mitt,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
myself, yes. Bartlett,
Yes,
and Saul.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Perfect. All right, and then we'll proceed to the Long Lake ask of, let's see, I've got $50,000 for the island control at Long Lake, as well as the eco harvesting side of the project.
Weren't there two separate line items?
I broke those into two separate.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
So I've got 50,000 for the island, and then the invasive aquatic management is
27.
27.
I'm sorry, 27. Why do I keep going with 21? Wishful thinking.
Can we discuss it and make one motion, do you think?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I sometimes I'm a member of the CLC, and I think they've been really good about protecting Long Lake through multiple different means, and this is cool. It's another tool in the bag, especially the removing the mats. I think will really make the neighbors happy, and it's something worth trying. So I would support it. Both 50 plus 27 is 77,000. Let's do it.
Did you have a question?
So, I just thought I'd mention that, the Muck Island part, those have, developed probably partly because of the herbicides that were used. And, the plants that get killed go down to the bottom of the lake, they start to decompose, they generate gases, they fill up to the top. And at the top, they become a source for other things to start to grow on them. And in some lakes, they've done that sort of temporarily, and then like in Spectral Pond, they've had this happen, and then they go back down to the bottom and they're sort of become part of the bottom. In this case, they've been floating for a while, and they have become really a more of a permanent part of the lake, and they have been kind of waiting for them to disappear, and they haven't. And I think if we get them out of there, and if we are going to eco harvesting rather than herbicides, which also takes the invasive plant material out of the lake, we probably are breaking the cycle for this kind of thing happening. We have a little bit of different situation in Forage Pond for now, because the Beaver Brook comes in under a bridge instead of, through some culverts. There's a big wetlands between Mill Pond and Forage Pond. A lot of those marsh clumps float in, and they're similar but much smaller, and they're not the permanent sort of structure that these are. So I think this may, in removing the muck islands, may be more or less of a one-time thing if we're able to do the eco harvesting to take care of the invasive plants going forward.
Thank you.
How does the eco harvesting compare in cost to the herbicide treatment?
Almost twice as much. Far more labor intensive.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments before we, oh, yeah, Nick.
I just wanted to get the description right. The minutes show right now $50,000 for the hiring of an amphibious excavator for removal of floating vegetative mats in Long Lake. $27,000 for eco harvesting of aquatic invasive plants that are contributing negatively to the nutrient-rich detritus of the lake bottoms. Is that at various sites or?
That's throughout the entire perimeter of the lake. It's always inspected.
Oh, is it still Long
It's the
Lake?
shallow water.
Both of these are Long Lake?
Both of these are
Okay.
Long Lake.
I'll just show of the lake. Excellent.
Very good. All right, if there are no other comments or questions, so do you want to make a motion?
And this would be open space.
I need to write that in
That's it, yes.
from open space.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the $77,000 for these two projects. Removing the islands and eco harvesting invasive plants. Taking the money from open space.
Thank you, Bartlett. Would somebody like to second?
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Jerry,
Yes.
Mitt,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
myself, yes. Bartlett
Yes.
and Saul.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
It's a
Yes,
boost.
thank you.
Thank you all. This is great news, and now we've got more work to do.
I want to know if I can borrow the amphibious excavator. and make your pond deeper.
We can have them chug right over.
Yeah.
Once you get that ramp improved, I want to launch that thing.
You should sell rides on it.
So that would be,
Yeah.
of course, that's one of the things of the eco harvester is everybody sort of gathers around it. So it's far more exciting than watching somebody pour chemicals into the water.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all the work that you do.
So much. We'll be in touch. Sure.
Have a great night. All right,
Thank
it
you.
is now 8:08. So we're gonna jump into the next application on our agenda for tonight, and that's the application for funding for historical markers. As you may recall, we did vote on the eligibility of this project the last time around. I did print a couple of these out in case anybody would like to take a look at them. Essentially,
Yes, please.
perfect. So, the Historical Commission is asking for $9,990 to replace, I'm sorry, Mick, did you need a?
I'd love a copy.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect.
You want to share? Sure.
So anyway, so the commission is looking for $9,990 to replace, refurbish, or clean 7 deteriorated historic markers, which includes plaques and 1 concrete or granite base. These markers are in really rough shape throughout the town, and we're looking to really start getting these things cleaned up and replaced or repaired. And the costs have gone up astronomically in terms of replacing the plaques and the monuments alone. The bases have, we've gotten quotes for anywhere from $2,500 to $4,000 a base. So they've gone up substantially. So we're hoping to essentially cover a fair chunk of these that are on our to-do list. They include the Meeting House sign on the Common, the Lawrence Tavern on Green Road, Harley Lumber, Warren's Grist Mill, Harley Lumber, Neshoba Prairie Indian Town on Newtown Road and Neshoba Road, the West Schoolhouse on Sanderson Road, the Porter Road Bridge, which I think a lot of people miss, going down Porter Road. It's right there, but
It's fine.
yeah. And then we've got the East Schoolhouse. So there's quite a few of these that have to get done, but these are the priority ones that we've lined up as the first go around of this particular project.
What's the Parley Lumber one gonna say?
So we'll have to review the language. A lot of the language,
This once was the longest continuing offer.
it would have to change. And a couple of them would have to be revisited, just because language can get updated, history changes. Well, history doesn't change, but it updates. Like
History grows.
history grows. That's the word I'm looking for. So that's essentially what we're looking for. So I do have one other copy if anybody would be interested in looking before. So do we have any questions from the committee?
It's excellent effort.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Any questions from the audience?
Lawrence Tavern, yay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. No hands raised. With no further comments or questions, would anybody like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the historical markers request for $9,990.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so we'll do a roll call vote. Jerry,
Yes.
Mick,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
myself, yes, Bartlett,
Yes,
and Saul.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. So next on the agenda, we have another historical project. It's an eligibility request, an application for funding, jointly filed by the Cemetery Commission and Historical Commission for gravestone preservation at West Lawn. I did print a couple of copies of this as well, if anybody would like to take a look. Essentially, this is the 4th phase of gravestone preservation at West Lawn. Previously, the CPC has been very, very helpful in granting $9,950 each year for work to get done, and roughly 17 to 20 gravestones have gotten done for the 2nd and 3rd phase. The 3rd phase is still in progress and will actually wrap up in the early summer of this year. And then once that's wrapped up, we're hoping to begin this phase of work if the committee so approves this application in town meeting, of course. So we would be hiring a preservation consultant firm to come in once again. And we would have that target goal of getting another 17 to 20 gravestones preserved during the next year or so, with hopefully this project ending in the early summer of 2025. But so yeah, essentially it's a continuation of the project that's been going that's been ongoing at West Lawn, and previously at the old Bearing Grounds, and that's what we have for you tonight. Does anybody have any questions on the committee?
I'm sort of catching up with the notes. And maybe for the sake of expediency, if Bartlett and Jeff, you felt still favorable and warm towards this
Yes,
project.
go
you might
ahead.
make the motions.
Use our names.
What would the language say? Thank you. That, how much money?
9950.
Is that's very similar to 99?
Yes, it's
Very
Oh,
close.
Okay. But these are
Interesting.
two separate projects, 9950. Excellent. From Historic Resources.
Yep.
For how many gravestone restorations?
Between 17 and 20. And so we would have to vote on the eligibility first and then the actual application for funding.
I move we vote on the to find this application eligible for funding, especially since it's the a subsequent phase of previous work that has been funded.
Thank you.
Second,
All right, it's moved and seconded. The roll call vote, Jerry,
Yes.
Mitt,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
myself, yes, Bartlett,
yes,
and Saul.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. So now we'll just need a motion for the funding. Would somebody like to make a motion for the funding application?
Mitt, would you like to read the motion? Sure, and I will.
The one that Bartlett moved, and
Yeah.
you seconded?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Great. The motion is that, $9,950 from Historic Resources from the restoration, for the restoration of 17 to 20 gravestone markers be awarded.
All right, it's been moved. Well, actually, Bartlett, could you so move?
so moved.
And I'll second.
Thank you. All right, it's moved and seconded. Now we'll do a roll call vote. Jerry,
Yes.
Mitt,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Bartlett
Yes,
and Saul.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I feel like I'm running on like two cylinders tonight, so excuse me if I'm rambling. All right. We'll jump right down to the Park and Recreation Commission. There's an eligibility and funding request for court resurfacing at 300 King Street. Alicia and Saul, did you want to jump into that?
Yeah, I can. Again, thank you guys so much for allowing us to present this tonight, because this was definitely a last minute thing, which I always, feel really bad bringing this to you guys. So I do really appreciate your time with this. So this funding was originally, we presented this for capital funding. And the idea behind this is we need to rehabilitate some of the cracks that are at the basketball court surfaces at 300 King Street. We would also need to resurface those courts as well. And another component, I guess, is more of that creativity category that you have. We did want to be able to put up some temporary pickleball lines on some of the basketball courts just to replace the ones that have been recently demolished. And we have some idea for a few other like social games that would be for multi-generational use. So that's ultimately the ask. I did put on here, we had a quote that was given to us a while back, a couple months ago, that was only valid for, I think it was 10 days. So I had put essentially 3% on top of that in case the prices had gone up. So that gets us to that 32,000, was it $32,110. And then again, if there is no need for that, obviously all of that money would come back to the CPC. So that's just kind of the general overview. If you have any questions, I am very happy to answer them.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions for Alicia and Saul?
I just, reading the proposal and looking at your very great diagram here. Are these other things gonna be part of this? I see a half court, I see pickleball, there's shuffleboard. Is that part of the resurfacing?
Yes, because part of that, they would have to redo the paint on there. So as we would do that resurfacing, the repainting, we would add those components on.
Okay.
Does anybody have a paper copy of this? So Anna can take a look at, I'm sorry, I didn't print
No,
one of
that's
them.
okay, no worries.
I do.
Can I just see it for a few minutes?
Yeah,
When you're
absolutely.
done?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. It has a proposal, it has a diagram. I'm just trying to see what.
How is this not considered maintenance? And I know it's not done annually, but how do we?
That's a good question. Because for the recreation category, let me see how that would fall here under our grid of.
I mean, this is it's not a regular maintenance activity. It's really a restoration,
Okay.
We
bringing
do
it
have,
back.
Yeah.
sorry, Saul, I didn't mean to talk over top of you, but part of that is the rehabilitation because part of the images that I sent, you guys can see that there are some extremely long cracks. And those will need to be rehabilitated before we can actually do any resurfacing to those cracks or to the surfaces.
I've been looking at the grid that I printed out for tonight, rehabilitation and restoration of recreational facilities is a permitted use under that particular bucket. Okay, so, but support is not, so it's a very, very good point. Yeah. Does anybody on the committee have any further questions? Any questions from the audience?
Seems like a worthy project.
What's the location of the project?
300 King Street.
Next to Castle and the Trees.
With no tree.
No tree. All right. Last call for committee comments and questions. Oh, Mitt,
What's the dollar number? Sorry.
80,000.
Okay.
Wait.
No.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Sorry. Sorry.
No, I should take 80,000.
Alicia, I almost gave you more money.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Well, good.
32.
We'll edit that part out later, don't worry.
32,110.
Or 80,000.
Or
No, yeah, $52,110.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angelo.
You almost got away with it.
From recreation
Recreation.
for the tennis court resurfacing project.
Basketball court.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no, if there aren't any other community comments or questions, anything from the audience? One last call. Okay. All right. Would somebody like to make a motion with what we have before us?
I will. I move that $32,110 from recreation for the basketball court resurfacing project at 300 King Street be awarded.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Jerry?
Yes.
Mitt?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Bartlett?
Yes.
And Saul?
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you, Alicia.
I really appreciate it.
Before we let Alicia go, I want to put her on the spot a little bit. previous project or a potential project that's currently in the budget for free cash spending, which is additional dock on the beach.
Yep.
And I wanted to kind of get the committee's opinion as to whether that would be an eligible project. I know we don't have all the details in front of us, but it seems like the sort of project that we had talked about working with FinCom and the select board to fund through CPC and reimburse through free cash to increase the blended fund usage. But I didn't know if there was a reason it wasn't eligible or some reason that we wouldn't go down that path.
The only information that I got from Robin Healy was that it was approved to go through free cash for the capital request. So that was the only reason that I'm aware of.
So Saul, you're saying that if it is eligible, that we could attempt to funnel the free cash through the CPC to increase our blended fund goal.
Correct.
I have a note in my capital budget to discuss that Monday night to see if that was something we could add to it or not. If you felt that it was a restoration as opposed to maintenance.
Well, actually, is it replacing the existing dock or adding a dock?
It's a little bit of both. So the previous dock that we have not been able to use for a few years. The plastic is eroding. It's got cracks. It fills with water. It's impossible to get in and out. So yes, we were looking to replace the old dock with this.
That seems eligible.
Yeah, if you look on the chart here for allowed uses for recreation, creating and preserving and rehabilitation, restoration, that's all. It sounds like it would fall within those categories.
Acquire, create, buy a new dock, buy a new raft. This is a raft, not a dock. Is that correct?
No, it's a dock.
Is it?
It's the what used to be a sort of a walking pier in the middle of the beach.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, great.
Yeah. And for all intents and purposes, it doesn't exist anymore.
That's correct.
Correct.
We're providing one.
Acquire a new one. Yeah, I think it's eligible. It would be.
So
So I guess that, you know, the challenge is it's gonna come late, but it seems like we're gonna have a number of things like that anyway. So Jerry, maybe this is for you guys to see if it makes sense to make that sort of swap.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So then we would, okay, so you'd have to bring an application forward really quickly, right?
I'm not sure what the cutoff is to make the warrant. It's coming up on us fast. If the committee did hold perhaps a special meeting within the next couple of weeks.
The warrant closes Monday.
Monday, okay, yeah, so.
But
I mean, we're meeting Monday, so we could decide.
And do we have a warrant article to approve? Because there's a whole bunch of things that need to go into that. I'm not even sure how that.
so I
We're
don't know
gonna
why.
come out of tonight with a warrant article.
I don't know why this can be an add-on to your warrant article, right? Because you already have an article. You're not adding an article. You're just.
We could have a placeholder. It's just, since this project wasn't listed on the agenda for tonight, we couldn't vote.
Right, I understand that. What I'm saying is you're going to have a warrant article that lists all of these. And you can just be on the little green sheet that prints out that says we added this one.
Yeah, we could potentially do that. Because this, yeah, I mean, Park and Rec could perhaps request a placeholder for now on the warrant. And if the article doesn't get approved, it could always be removed. Does that?
That's correct. If you guys, I can fill out an eligibility and application and get that to you tomorrow. If that's something that you really would like.
That'd be great. And then, you could, like I said, request a placeholder and then, maybe submit it for committee review at an upcoming, meeting, hopefully soon.
You can probably put it as a placeholder on your current article, right?
Mhm.
And then if at whatever the number is, and then if you guys don't vote to support it later.
Do we have a number for
I'm looking
this?
right now, actually.
I mean, you have a price for this new dock?
I don't have it right in front of me, so I apologize for that, but I know it's around like 55,000.
Okay.
The number I had in my sheet was 42,436, unless that changed.
Nope, then you're probably right.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so Alicia, if you could look into that,
Okay, I will
and
do.
then, and be in touch with Carolyn and, perhaps we can get something moving for the next meeting and before town meeting.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is there any way that, this dock could be, construed as a normal, business, normal thing that would be funded by the town and not by community preservation?
Well,
Because there's an
the-
issue with CPC money replacing things that are,
The
Part of
town
the town.
is funding it. They will be transferring
that's-
money to
Right,
CPC in the amount
But
of.
it still ends up being CPC.
Yeah.
Even though it's supported through the back door.
I mean, we
You're
could be
right.
very
But
straightforward and
that's
just,
okay.
yeah. I mean, we could say, yeah, just have the town do it, but by adding to the blended
no,
funds.
I understand that,
yeah.
I'm just saying, that if, without the CPC, if the town would fund it, then, we're replacing a line item in the town budget, and that's not what we're supposed to do.
But I think the blended funds allows the town to be able to do that up to that
Okay. I mean,
2%. They can't do it more than that, and they can't do it for the first 1%. But I think that's how it's worded, or
Yeah.
how I read it.
Okay.
Alright, well, we will await, that from Alicia and, Park and Rec. And, why don't we go ahead and move on to our next, project, number 7 on our agenda, the Affordable Housing Trust eligibility and funding requests for the rental assistance program and future housing project planning / development expenses.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, of course.
Annie Houston, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, and we need to open our meeting since we have a quorum of our members. So
Absolutely.
Sue Melander, Charlotte Harvey, Mark Rabacher, and myself at 8:32. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so, did you all want to move up a little bit, or I guess you can stay there, yeah, it doesn't really make a difference.
Carla, would you like to present this?
Sure. Does everybody have, my
I've got it electronically, but
eligibility?
not on paper.
I-
Is it's the one that says 90, not the 80?
90,000, right. So I'm requesting, $90,000 for community housing. The project description that I wrote is, the Housing Trust forms and implements the housing policies of the Community Preservation Committee. The trust has had for several years a rental assistance program managed jointly with the Elder and Human Services Department. EHS presents candidates for assistance to the trust, and the trust votes to provide aid. The amount of aid has been limited to $250 per household per month, paid directly to the landlord, with an annual reapplication required and a limit of 3 years duration. No more than 20 recipients have been in the program at any one time. The trust voted on March 18th this year to increase the payment to $500 per month effective July 1st and to limit the number of participants to 15. The budget figure of 90,000 is derived from the calculation of 15 recipients times 500 times 12 months. 500 is in line with the neighboring town programs and will provide needed help to some of our residents. And I checked the support box under housing on the second page. I also checked reserve, but I think support is probably better, is that?
Yeah.
So that's the request for eligibility,
For how much money?
90,000, 90.
So Bartlett, I've got 80,000 on the application that I'm looking at.
That was my previous application,
Gotcha.
which has been edited. On that application, I was applying money based on the old budget
Oh, thank you.
of $60,000, which we had spent on the rental assistance program, plus some money for incidental expenses related to our property acquisitions. And because we increased the amount that we're paying to the recipients of the rental assistance, I increased this total sum and took out the incidental expenses for the property acquisitions because we have enough in our bank to cover those incidental expenses. And we're looking at, surveyors and septic systems and possibly signing up with Habitat to build one of the units, or two of the units. And so this is a different application, which is funding just the Littleton Rental Assistance Program.
I see. Okay.
So you feel that the increase in the amount, I understand, that's very good. And the decrease of participants from 20 to 15 will not negatively affect.
Yeah, at one point during COVID, there were 20 participants, but most of the time it's been 12 to 13, and quite a fair amount of turnover. 4 or 5 drop out or move, and 4 or 5 join per year usually.
So 15 will not hamper you in distributing.
We think not, but I think
You're doing, it's your best guess.
yeah, it's a reasonable guess, I think. And several towns are doing $500 a month. Westford, which we're not competing with, has just adopted a $750 a month rental assistance, but that's with a 2-year limit.
Okay.
All right.
I mean,
Have anything to add?
I don't believe so. Any questions?
So first, I mean, this seems eligible. I mean, we've done this in the past.
I have done it in the past.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions from the committee? Comments? Any questions from the audience? All right, very good. Would somebody perhaps like to make a motion on that?
Mitt, do you want to tell us what our motion should be?
I'm shaking my head. Is this the eligibility request?
Eligibility.
Okay. I need to type. Okay, that the Affordable Housing Trust project supporting a few dozen households through monthly rental assistance be deemed eligible.
I wouldn't go a few dozen.
It's 20, up to 20,
Up to 15.
Up to 15.
up to 15, sorry.
I think
Let's say 15 to 20.
that gives us a little wiggle room in case there's an epidemic of some kind.
Okay. Yeah. That the Affordable Housing Trust.
You
Well,
need to say-
the project is to fund the Affordable Housing Trust.
Is to fund this particular program of the Housing Trust
Okay.
This particular project, yes, the program project,
program,
yes.
yeah.
And we'll explain a little bit more about why we're being more specific this time around.
Is there a reason you need to say a number?
No.
And then just
I don't think
the fund
so.
rental assistance?
We could probably just leave that
Don't need to-
part.
yeah.
Yeah. All right.
You guys are waiting for me to let's see, Jeff Yates moved that.
We-
The Affordable Housing Trust project to support
Rental assistance program.
be deemed eligible.
as outlined in their eligibility application.
Can I read that out? That's been
Sure.
implied in all
Yeah,
our
yeah, no
motions.
problem.
Absolutely.
Great.
So moved.
I did so move according to that.
It's in the minutes, so
It's
it
in
must
the-
be true.
Exactly.
No, thanks for asking, Andrew. I think we're good.
Perfect. And do we have a second?
Maybe you pick. Jerry hasn't
I'll
seconded.
second
it.
it.
Is this how this is supposed to work?
Okay, thank you.
All right, so moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Jerry,
Yes.
Mitt,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Jeff,
Aye.
myself, I, Bartlett,
Aye.
and Saul are,
Yes.
Excellent.
oh, perfect. All right, we're unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much.
So now we'll just have to vote on the actual funding requests for this
Application.
particular project. So Bartlett, did you want to add something else?
Well, I have a little explanation, like trying to answer the project description and goals and stuff. So I read it?
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay, Affordable Housing Trust application for CPC funding. The project is to support Littleton renters in need of financial assistance using the Trust's rental assistance program. Eligible residents are vetted and recommended by Elder and Human Services, and payments are made directly to the participating landlords. This program has helped many families stay in their homes. Affordable housing is a goal of the CPC and of the town's master plan. The trust program keeps residents in their homes both during temporary setbacks and for some longer-term issues. The funding is requested for the fiscal year starting July 1st, 2024, and is the maximum amount that can be used on the trust policies of $500 payments per month per household and limit of 15 participants at any one time. I said maximum because I expect that it'll actually be less. We won't use that full amount. In cases where the rent is less than $500, the payment is limited to the actual rent charged. Participants are admitted to the program as EHS processes their applications, so some will continue in the program past June 30th, 2025. And that's just to indicate that it's a continuing rolling program.
In the past, have you spent less than you planned, or what happens then? Do you have some kind of rollover amount, or how does that work?
No, we budget an amount, and then we've never gone up even close to that.
Okay.
And it just stays in our bank account.
Okay.
It's one of the things that's built our bank account out to such a irresponsible height.
I'm not going to put that in minutes.
Strike that from the record, please.
You
That
are.
was a bleep.
Yeah, there's a lot of coughing during that comment.
Yes. Thank you for
It
the,
sounds great, Bartlett.
yeah.
actually.
I will move to, we have to vote on the funding, actual funding now.
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
I will move to,
That $90,000 from community housing.
yes,
What did I do on Jeff?
yes, you go ahead. I'll just move my lips silently and you can talk.
Be awarded to support the Affordable Housing Trust Rental Assistance Program.
Perfect. And before that motion is in effect, I just want to make sure there weren't any other comments or questions before we move forward from anybody. All right, very good. All right, so Mitts, you got that? Who's going to so move that?
Jeff moved it.
It's already
Oh,
moved.
Jeff, okay.
Get a second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, it's moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Jerry?
Yes.
Mitt?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Bartlett?
Yes.
And Saul?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Trust.
Perfect. So that's all set. Number 8 on the agenda for tonight, we had other projects that may come before the committee, and we touched on the dock for Park and Recreation a little earlier. So we'll await that. Is there anything else that we think may come before the committee prior to the warrant closing? Any other priority projects that? Yes, Lyle.
Would this be an appropriate time?
Certainly.
Thank you. Lyle Webster, 33 Bulkley Road, transaction Webster, and also 25 Bulkley Road for purposes of this evening. So bit of a palate cleanser. I'd like to thank everyone for all their unanimity all along, including backing up to November 1st, so that we may look forward to May 7th. So in case it hasn't been brought around to everyone, the select board is working to bring the Webster land acquisition back up to the annual town meeting on May 7th. So we are here to seek the support of Community Preservation Committee once again as a refresher and as promised palate cleanser. As you may recall, on a very long evening, I thanked the FinCom for all of their work to keep all of our AAA rating and all they do to watch our resources, but that there are fortunately other committees that see other resources in town. So I gratefully presented the unanimous support for acquiring the Webster land by the Historic Commission, the Littleton Conservation Trust, the Conservation Commission, and this esteemed Community Preservation Commission. We would seek that again. So the select board and new town administrator are working to get a new appraisal with new factors brought in to get the appraisal up to a level where Community Preservation Committee funds could actually be used. So we learned a lot leading up to last November, how things work in town and how occasionally they do not. So we would like to see this move forward again, and we would like to request again the support of this board. And since it will be coming back to you after it makes through channels of town administrator and the select board, Conservation Commission, and back to the Community Preservation Commission for funding, we would like you to know about that since it's now March and May isn't far away.
Thank you, Lyle. So the select board, I imagine, or perhaps, I'm not sure which entity will actually be applying for this. Concom.
So there's a placeholder on the warrant that I believe that the goal is to use CPC funds to purchase the property. So it needs to be a CPC article on the warrant, but there is a placeholder for it right now.
So you're saying you're getting a new appraisal?
Yes.
Okay. When do you expect to have that?
In time. Websters have been working on this since November 6th, let's say. So everything else rallied together.
Thank you as always, Lyle, and we'll be on the lookout for this possibly within the next month or so, then I would imagine.
Yes, so certainly I know you've got a whole host of things you're watching over and doing all the work to get it through. So there is a placeholder looking to get language ready before we go to print, shall we say, so to cut the amount of inserts in the warrant.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you guys need to formally put in the warrant article, or we're going to put it in and say it's yours.
We have to know the numbers, but because we have to make sure we have money.
Right. So there's two
Yeah.
different things. One is it has to be in the warrant by Monday.
Right.
And then the number has to be in by town meeting.
Right.
In your vote.
We did vote before last town meeting, before we found out that we couldn't do it. I mean, we did vote for this. I also just want to mention, I saw you at the meeting last night where we're looking at the map with your property on it. and it became more, interesting to have open space in that part of town with, when we're seeding it with potentially a lot more. Anyway, so.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, I didn't need to editorialize, but part of the storyline for the Websters is there's a great deal of development being planned, has to. Towns grow, we're close to Boston, we're going to continue to grow. The Websters are seeking to help with undevelopment and the value of this land as supported by those 4 boards and commissions. This is the original land of Littleton, that home, the original home of the Bulkleys before it was Littleton. This is the crossover of colonial and pre-colonial history on this ground. As great as it is to have 300 plus years of the Bulkley farm, it's the Neshoba from all the centuries before that. And we do have ceremonial stone landscape on the property. So we literally have the ability to come down on the right side of history by voting to preserve this. And as much as it has been the honor of our family to be only 2 families since colonial settlers have taken care of this property, Gretchen and I are the stewards du jour, as I've been saying, but we won't be around forever. And we would like this preserved forever, so that's why we'd like.
So you've been practicing your town meeting speech.
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you're confident that this route will work?
Confident enough that we've been funding it for 6 more months, yes, sir. So we got out all the other siblings because we have enough runway in front of us to get there. So we have been securing this property for going on 2 years now so that the town could have the opportunity to preserve it forever after.
We thank you greatly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lyle. All right, so we'll be on the lookout for that. And Amit, did you have a question?
I just, since we're convened, should we be discussing it in terms of like raw dollar figures or, I mean, because it came to, last time I thought about it, as this is me, the taxpayer now, last time I thought about it was sitting in town meeting saying, well, this could happen and it's not the CPC money. So I took that hat off. I'm putting it back on now as a committee person. And this is the first time I've sort of really had to think about it. So when are we going to deliberate and discuss it?
So once we receive an application for eligibility and funding, we would actually be able to dive into the numbers and consider what we have in reserves, the impacts, and of course that would have to go. I assume maybe Concom would be proposing the actual applications for eligibility and funding. We haven't discussed that on the Concom, but so we would get the 2 applications before us. We will review them and essentially dive into them for tonight's purposes, since it's not an explicitly posted item on the agenda. We can't really take any votes or do anything like that, but
I understand. Yeah, that all makes sense. I guess then it would feel like a good process. I have no problem not talking about it more tonight. Being assured that in our next meeting, we might look at eligibility. We try to separate eligibility from applications for funding. And, this is a press because we're coming up on calendar issues.
Yeah.
We haven't followed that plan much tonight, but it would be nice to talk about it in terms of, because what we usually do is, assuming it's a really big ticket item, is we want to make sure that we press against our presenter and say, have you beat the bushes for partners? Do you have skin in the game? These are the types of questions we ask. And, are there other funds in the town that could be, brought? And we do have some fundraising efforts, I know, through the community, through Littleton Conservation Trust. So all that stuff is things that I'd like to discuss.
absolutely.
Before we're having to look at the dollar figure.
I think it's a very important part because there will be a lot of moving parts to something like this, as we noted in the last go around. So yeah, I think it would be very helpful. And I would hope that, prior to us actually holding our next meeting, there would be a chance for materials to get out to the committee members for review. Not to discuss, of course, due to open meeting law, but to review and give us a really good sense of what we're looking at in terms of appraisals, proposed estimates from this committee, and any other funds that may come from, say, the trust, grants. So yeah, it's gonna be a process and a compact process, unfortunately. But yes, so we will wait those applications and we'll see where.
And also if there's a path from, the administration or FinCom about how we would go about making the purchase, whether it's a straight purchase or a bonding or, there's other layers there.
And actually, Saul, this has come up. I know that FinCom has promoted bonding CPC funds, which increases our capacity. I mean, that's something that he's suggesting is support.
I think that's something that we should look into. I don't think this committee has any experience bonding things, but conservation has.
Well, no, there
So
are,
we can-
I mean, when Carolyn shows us the overall, there are some projects that have been, CPC projects that have been bonded in the past.
Right,
The tennis court's just one.
but
Right, and the tennis court is one that is maybe a model because that's was bonded and then the funds are coming from, or the town is depositing the equivalent of the bond payment each year into blended funds. So it's sort of that mixing of blended fund and direct payment.
But I guess the question was, who does the town bonds it? I mean, this is, my head explodes thinking about it.
I know it's happened, but
Yeah,
I don't remember participating in it except to sort of do it. Say it.
you know, I'm glad you're coming back.
Yes.
When is the next CPC meeting?
Typically, it's the third Wednesday of the month, so that would be. I don't have the calendar in front of me, unfortunately.
The 16th of April?
16th, so April 16th.
Okay.
Would be our
Oh, I'm
next
sorry,
meeting.
17th.
April
17th.
17th, okay. All right. So it's earlier in the month, okay.
All right, so
So-
we will.
Just for clarity, you're hoping to say eligibility on the 17th and then May 1st vote funding effectively or something like that?
I think that would be good.
Or
Well, I mean,
maybe we could do it.
Lyle's got to get the actual ask to you and he
Yeah.
may not have it by April 17th on the actual cost.
Right.
So it's gonna be probably closer to town meeting time, so I don't know.
I don't know if it matters to anybody else, but the 17th is vacation week. I will once again be away, but can do this again.
Well, would it be better to move it up or back?
Are you also away that week?
Yeah.
Okay. What should we do then? Let's see.
Not a problem for me.
I'm not participating in school vacation.
I feel like I should pull my calendar out.
Forward to it, then. I don't know what I'm doing yet.
I think
Let's take a look.
You're gonna have to be here twice.
So I mean, the alternative would be April 24th, the last Wednesday of the month. Is that?
the one earlier, because
And we have the dock thing also.
We do, yeah, let's see. So Historical Commission meets the second Wednesday of the month, which would mean that Linda and myself would be off, but if we could get a quorum together, I mean, that's,
I'll be here.
so we'll have to, maybe we'll put a doodle poll out to get a good date together, because I'm not sure what will work for Carolyn. And she does typically attend the historical commission meetings too, so so we'll yeah, why don't we do that? We'll put a doodle poll out to see what would work best. All right.
Sort of on the earlier side would be.
Oh,
There's
much more
time,
ideal,
yes.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, I think you're saying you won't have information earlier, right?
Yeah.
Right, but if you wanted to, yeah,
What if we can do the eligibility discussion?
Okay,
Up
yeah.
if you
without
wanted to separate the
numbers?
two, then earlier is probably better. If
Okay.
you want them all together, then later is better.
Okay.
And you wanted a thorough discussion on. I mean, you don't think we could do it at the same meeting?
We could, I think I just want to advocate for, as a reminder at least, that we do